Aristotle's Poetics, the 26 different parts wise analysis. This is about first section, part 1, that is titled Imitation Common to Various Arts. So, imitation, the importance of imitation in art. We know Aristotle gives, again, it is Aristotle too gives much importance to imitation, or Aristotle himself actually introduces this idea of art as an imitation or representation of an object. And now he talks about different kinds of, that's a means of imitation he would like to talk about. So imitation, obviously we know we are imitating something, we are representing something through different means. So the means differ in different or with the different kinds of art forms. I have already told you in the beginning itself he is not completely devoting the whole discussion on tragedy. With the various art forms he starts the discussion, and the first topic itself is about imitation common to various arts. But the means of imitation differ. Means of imitations, the imitation differ. That is the major argument point here he makes. And we come across different kinds of arts. We have a division among what is the medium of painting, the means with which the painting imitates something, that is representing the likeness of many objects through the medium of line and color. How does painting imitate something, it or represent something? It is by the likeness of many objects, that is about the way it portrays by using lines and colors. Now just think about singing. How does singing, the representation in singing happen? That is with the medium of rhythm, language and melody. We need all these three. That is about rhythm. We know the rhythm that can bring a different effect in our songs, that is singing. And language, obviously we need the language, the words, the combinations, and melody also is one of the essential features of singing as an art form. And how singing with these media singing actually, how does that represent something? So some subject, some theme that is represented again in that art with that by that art, but the medium it uses is not line and color as it the medium as it is the means of representing in singing, that is with the medium as rhythm, language and melody. But in painting we have already seen that to be line and color. And let us come with the art of dancing. What is the medium in that? It is rhythm without melody. Rhythm, it may not be melodious. Rhythm with the bodily movement you can create rhythm. Not every time melody is not needed. So there actually it differs from singing, song. Okay. And the dancers represent human character, we know. Actually, even there are dance forms which can portray entire story of a human life, or the very lengthy stories, lengthy events and situations can be represented just with the dancing, the gestures, the bodily movements. And they represent human character and what men do and undergo, that can be represented. That's why we talk about the bodily movements and the rhythm involved in that not necessarily contain or carry the melody that we see with the singing. So these are different. These are not all the art forms do not take the same media. So that is the main thing we have to. And now he talks about there's an art whose medium is language alone without melody. So only with the language also you can represent something. The language be metrical or non-metrical, doesn't matter. And verse is not essential. Verse, you mean the kind of musical verse and prose we talk, and then again we can understand the main difference. Verse is a kind of metric composition, and certain arts that employ several media. We can see some other arts which employ several media together, and either singing or in combination of two, or each to consider certain other arts which employ all three media together, rhythm, melody and verse together. So these are different, and now we come across such arts are that all together, the arts which use the three types of media together, we call that to be, or Aristotle lists out that to be, dithyrambic and nomic poetry. Both of those use the three types of media together. Okay, and then he talks about tragedy and comedy, which also use the three, but the three brought separately, one after another, separately or one after another. So this is about the difference between dithyrambic and nomic poetry. The four of these use three media, that make use of these three media for the representation. Rhythm, those use melody, verse, all these can be part of, or the media of, for the representation of the events, situations, life and characters in all these four kinds of art forms. But the difference is dithyrambic and nomic poetry use all these three together, but tragedy and comedy that use only they see separately, only they use this. So that is the major difference he points out there. Now let me talk about the objects of imitation. That is next we move on. Let me talk about the part 2 of the same section, section 1, and part 2 talks about the objects of imitation. Character is represented as good, bad or the middle state, in the middle state. This is about the objects of imitation. Next major topic, that is part 2, under part 2. Objects, what do you mean by objects? Objects are men in action. That is the primary objects. Of course, we prefer the representation of some of the human characters. Without characters, we cannot actually portray a story. Okay, of course, animal stories and all are there, but those are later events. During the time of Shakespeare, this Aristotle and Plato, they were strict about portraying very serious characters and their lives. So they never could afford this very animate story or something. So they wanted something as primary objects, and most often those were men in action. That is the object of their imitation, and either of a higher or lower type. Now we can see what kind of an object or what kind of a representation or men in action, what kind that can be. So either two choices he gives. It's either of a higher or lower type. Now what does he mean by this higher or lower type? Is it about the caste and class difference we see nowadays? No, that is not the case, but this is purely about an idea we all hold in common about human nature. There is distinction between goodness and badness. That's all with it. It's not about some color or racial or class or differences, but this is about goodness and badness he talks. And in the imitation, the agents must be represented as better than we ourselves, or worse, or some such men as we. That's above or below average. Every time he prefers the men represented in the art to be above or below average, or in between, in the midway, that is between the two extremes. And we always, there is a suggestion, but not here, but as part of tragedy he will refer. That is about keeping an in-between status in representing the men in standing in between. Should not be too good nor too bad, but this is just about the possibilities of the types or the categories under which a human nature can be told about or discussed. That is about the above average, below average, or the in between status, either higher type or the lower type, mean or base type, or the midway. It's nothing to do with the other ideas nowadays. The society makes use to distinguish between human beings with these certain other unlikely caste and caste systems and all. This is just about the way, essential nature and the distinction he makes on behalf of that. Now, in the same part, he talks about how these agents of representation, how we can distinguish the tragedy from comedy in connection with the represented agents, or the comedy tends to, that's the point is, comedy tends to represent the agents as worse. That is not as actually in the present sense of the term Aristotle used it. Comedy he takes to be one of the very baser kinds of art forms. So this is just about the agents. Even we do not have, he doesn't use it in the sense that we talk about comedy as a very very pleasant medium, but about the kind of people, the representation goes like having some awkward representation, very incongruous characters coming to the stage and playing something which never we can afford with, or we cannot appreciate like. So that is the way comedy represents the agents as worse, the tragedy as better than the most men of the present day. Tragedy, it is not about highly elevated and elegant character representation. It also doesn't opt for, but it is just about the better representation, that is better than the man of the present day, so that we can feel like a very average or a day-to-day life acquaintance of ours. That is, we always see such people, that is either better or somewhat worse than our own nature. This human nature is essentially comprised of certain characteristics and all. We always talk about everything in a balanced manner, like anger, love, joy, fear, worry, emotion, feelings, all these things, a combination. But we see that then we may be having an assumption like, yeah, in this kind of a nature that's affordable. Beyond that, if the anger, if the temperamental behavior goes, we cannot afford. So that is the way we actually make companionship with the people. So this is the same idea that Aristotle too makes use of, that is representing the characters who most often seem better than us, but not the highest one which we feel like having a role model on the stage or something. So this is these are the major ideas Aristotle talks in the part 1 and part 2 of section 1. So first is about the imitation common to various arts. That is again in that section he lists out the means by which they imitate, the objects as they are represented, the manner in which these objects are represented. These three things will come to. So that is the way. In the part introduction we see the three part, and again first two sections I have already discussed, and the part 3 will be about the manner of imitation, drama or narrative, the origin of drama. All these will come in the next session.